Mesdames et Messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, the election committee of the Conservative Party leadership is ready.
Bonsoir.
Good evening.
Bonsoir, chers amis conservateurs.
Good evening, dear Conservative friends.
Je vous souhaite la bienvenue au Québec.
I welcome you to Quebec
Pour la
for this French language debate, which for the very first time will be held in the Greater Montreal region.
En mon nom, en tant que vice,
On my own behalf, as Vice President of the party and co-chair of the organizing committee for the leadership election, as well as on behalf of my colleague Ian Brody and members of the COEC, first of all, I would like to thank everyone here, everyone in the room who has joined us tonight. Thank you for being here in such great numbers.
mais merci aussi à ceux et celles.
And thank you also for all those who are following the debate on their screens
Je souhaite
across Canada.
la bienvenue
I would particularly like to welcome the thousands upon thousands of new members of the Conservative Party.
Notre parti est heureux
Our party is happy and proud to welcome you into our great movement, regardless of whether you've been a member for many, many years or you have just joined. Please be aware that you are all a part of our great Conservative family.
votre voix
Your voice counts
et votre engagement
for us, and your active commitment is such that the Conservative Party of Canada remains the only genuine alternative at the next election.
Je tiens également
I would also like to thank the candidates as well as their teams for the
pour leur dévouement
enthusiasm, passion, determination, hard work during this race.
aux nombreuses personnes
And I would also like to thank the many people involved in organizing tonight's debate here in Laval.
J'ai aussi le plaisir
I also have the great pleasure of announcing
de notre prochain
that
chef se tiendra le 10
we will unveil the name of our next leader on September 10th in Ottawa.
capitale.
At the heart of our capital region, that is where Conservatives from all parts of Canada will finally be able to gather in person for the very first time since 2018.
La programmation de cette journée sera annoncée.
The program for the day will be announced in the coming weeks. But for now, without further ado, I would invite my colleagues,
Et Diane Carey
Rick Eckstein and Diane Carey, the co-chairs of the Debates Committee,
les détails de la soirée.
to explain the details of how tonight will unfold.
Merci Valérie and bonsoir Canada.
Thank you, Valerie, and good evening, Canada. I'm Rick Eckstein, and with me is my fellow moderator, Diane Carey.
Merci. Merci, Rick.
Thank you, Rick,
Merci à tous pour votre
and thank you, everyone, for being here this evening for the second debate.
travail
Our 6 candidates are working very hard.
ce soir. Demande
Coming up on this stage and debating in front of you all requires a great deal of courage. All our participants, all our candidates deserve our thanks and our appreciation.
Avant de débuter,
Before we begin, we'd like to take a moment to share our sadness following the tragedy in Texas yesterday. On behalf of all Canadians, our thoughts and prayers are with the family and the communities who have suffered the tragedy.
Si vous avez regardé le premier débat,
If you watched the first debate, the English language debate,
les visions des candidats
you have an idea of every candidate's vision on political issues in Canada. Tonight we'll do the same thing, but in a different format. Here are some directions for people here in Laval with us tonight. When candidates will appear on the screen, on the stage rather, do welcome them warmly. After that, we would ask you to remain silent during the debate so that we can avoid delays, because our schedule is pretty tight. Every time people applaud, unfortunately, the candidates will lose some time. And if people interrupt the debate, they will be asked to leave the room. Please remain silent during the debate and give the candidates an opportunity, a chance to project their ideas. Our goal tonight is to inform you, mobilize you in the process.
rendez-vous sur notre site internet au conservative.ca.
You can find us on our internet site, conservative.ca, and become a member of our party. Canadians recognize that this race is coming at a critical point in Canada's future. We are beating all records for signing on new members. If you would like to become a member and have a voice in the future of our country, join today. The deadline for membership to be able to vote in this leadership race is June 3rd. You have only 9 days to sign up and join our party to make a difference. For $15, you can become a member of the Conservative Party of Canada and support the candidate which, in your view, best represents you. Remember, this is your country and these are your future leaders. And now we will introduce our moderator. Marc-Olivier Fortin is an economist. He is a co-owner and since 2020 the owner of Joli Rouge Cider, which makes cider in Saguenay. He has sat on the Conservative Party's national executive and twice sat on the organizing committee for the election of the party leader. He has been campaign chair for Quebec's Conservative Party at the last election. Please give a warm welcome to Marc-Olivier Fortin.
Bonsoir tout le monde.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Rick and Diane, for all your very hard work. I have been in their shoes twice, and I'm well aware of the work and the time that it takes to offer members a quality debate. My name is Marc-Olivier Fortin, and I will be your moderator for tonight. Thank you for being here in such great numbers, and thank you to the organizing committee that invited me to moderate this debate. Canada is a bilingual country. 2 weeks ago, as you saw, our candidates took part in an English language debate, and tonight they'll have the opportunity to do the same in French. These exchanges will be lively. They will be touching on issues of interest to you as Conservative Party members and also of interest to all Canadians. I'll come back for a moment to the rules of the debate. The debate will last 2 hours. And as my colleague said, we ask you to remain silent throughout the debate, as we asked you to do during previous debates. Please remain silent and seated to let candidates speak and to make sure that we don't have to cut any of their time. Of course, when candidates come up on stage, do welcome them, applaud them with all your energy, and encourage them. Candidates will have limited time to speak. They will have to respect those limits. There will be 3 segments to the debate, and I will be happy to explain the rules before each segment. So without further ado, I would invite you to warmly welcome the candidates to the 2022 Conservative Party leadership race.
S'il vous plaît, on va commencer.
Please, we're about to begin.
On va commencer, s'il vous plaît.
And the debate is about to begin.
S'il vous plaît, merci.
Please.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you.
Merci, s'il vous plaît, on va commencer.
Thank you.
Vous en avez profité, c'est la dernière fois.
I hope that you enjoyed clapping and encouraging them, because it's the last time you'll be doing it during this debate. Now, a statement by each candidate on their vision for the party. The candidates received this statement. We all want what's best for Canada, from John A. Macdonald's Railway to Brian Mulroney's free trade. When your term is over, what legacy will you leave Canada? Each of them will have 45 seconds to answer, and I would invite Mr. Poilievre to begin. My legacy will be the freest country in the world, where people will be able to control their lives, including their health decisions. They will not be forced to be vaccinated. They'll have an opportunity to decide for themselves. Economic equality, and now inflation has taken that freedom away by returning purchasing power to individual Canadians. We will see people who can buy food for their children, gasoline for their cars, and our young people will be able to afford their own house. Freedom of speech without censorship by the state or by the woke movement, so that people can freely say what they think and make their own ideas and share them. And lastly, the freedom to make their own decisions in the freest country in the world, with paychecks, good paychecks, and freedom. Thank you.
Monsieur Brown, à vous la parole.
Mr. Brown? Thank you. My legacy will be to create a strong, united, and winning Conservative Party, one that can win elections by acting on the good ideas that myself and my colleagues will be sharing tonight. I am a winner, a winning leader, and I have been one my whole career. I am the mayor of a major city that's winning in areas where Conservatives don't win at present. I'm a Conservative who knows how to win in urban regions, as I have shown. I will be taking the same approach that I have used to win around Canada, so that we can start winning seats in Quebec. We have to build a Conservative Party that can win the election, and I am the person who can do that. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Aitchison, I am standing as a candidate because Canada's political system is broken. Canada needs leaders offering genuine solutions to the challenges that Canadians face every day. My vision of Canada is to ensure that future generations are more prosperous than ours. Grocery bills, the housing crisis, and the price of gas are making life very difficult for people. It is not by making Canadians angrier and more frustrated that we will bring solutions. You deserve leaders who work for you and not for themselves. I would propose to lead our Conservative Party and to provide genuine solutions to the issues we face every day. I have the experience and the skills to deliver solutions and to restore dignity and respect to our political system. Support me, join me, and let's build our future together. Thank you. Mr. Baber? Thank you. I'm Roman Baber. I'm a former member of Parliament in the Ontario Legislature, and I'm very happy to be here today. Canada is a bilingual country. I know that it's very important for a Prime Minister to speak both languages. Over the past 3 years, I had a French lesson almost every morning. I got up at 7 a.m. to do that. And I ask you to forgive me because it's still not very good, but I'm continuing to improve. My legacy will be to have defended the rights of all Canadians, including all Quebecers.
Je crois
I believe
multiculturalisme au Canada.
that multiculturalism is wonderful. I am an immigrant myself. We all have the right to our religion and our language. I would ask that the Quebec government respects the right of all Quebecers, and I'm ready to take any legal means necessary to defend each and every Canadian.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Baber. Mr. Charest? I want history to remember that I succeeded in uniting my party, that I will have succeeded in having a majority government elected, one that's represented in every region of Canada, and that my government will represent conservative values while representing all Canadians, regardless of their political stripe. I wish to leave a government that has worked in partnership with the provinces and respected them, a government that has implemented major projects, energy projects, reduced our carbon footprint with the support of Indigenous people. Canada will become an energy provider across the world. We will contribute to feeding the planet. Our strategic minerals will be an input for energy sources. We will be a world destination for talent. Men and women from around the world will come to us, and we will leave a more prosperous country to our children and a united country to our children.
Dr. Lewis, à vous la parole.
Dr. Lewis, hello everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. After my mandate, the country will be united, and each province's unique contribution will have been recognized. We need to present a strong and positive common vision. With me at the helm, Canada will be the country that is the most prosperous and free in the world. I will always fight to protect our sovereignty. We need to defend freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom of conscience. We need to protect all those without imposing any carbon taxes. We will be the party that always defends, unhesitatingly defends our rights. I will unite the party and the country to help everyone prosper and be free. Now we move on to the second part of the debate. Candidates have received the subjects of the debate, but have not received the actual questions. I will put the question, and each candidate will have 45 seconds to answer. The order in which they speak has been established by a draw. Once they have all spoken, there will be a 4-minute open debate. The candidate who was the first to answer the question will start the open debate afterwards. I will do my very best to give all candidates wishing to speak the time. But if things seem to drag on, I will take the liberty of introducing my own question on the same theme, of course. The debate will be a great show, but please don't applaud. Let your candidate speak. The first question is on immigration. The Quebec government is anticipating 35,000 immigrants to cross, irregular immigrants to cross over Roxanne Road. As Prime Minister, how will you manage illegal immigration in Canada? The first person to speak will be Dr. Lewis.
Well, I'm an immigrant myself. I think that we must focus on quality rather than on quantity. We must facilitate access to employment to help employers and employees alike. The immigration system must meet the needs of the nation. Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Mr. Baber. Well, I'm an immigrant to Canada myself as well. I came to Canada with my family when I was 15. We received a lot of benefits from this country. and we've contributed greatly to the country in return as well. I think that Canadian multiculturalism is a great thing. Canada has a young population, or an aged population rather. We need immigration. Why do immigrants come to Canada? Well, they come for democracy and for opportunities, quite simply. These are the themes of my campaign. Immigrant values are conservative values, and we should not leave the vote of new Canadians to the Liberals. Mr. Brown, I'm against illegal immigration because it makes it more difficult to immigrate legally. The family unification process is far too long. Labour shortages in the construction industry, in informatics and in transportation and other sectors is huge. And for that reason, I think we should create an immigration system. We should extend it, but we should also stop illegal immigration as well. Mr. Poilievre, I'm against illegal entry into our country, but I'm in favour of immigration at the same time. I wouldn't have a wife without immigration. My wife, Anita, is a Venezuelan refugee who came to settle in Montreal. But I want to take away the barriers that stop our immigrants from succeeding. There are many doctors and physicians who come from other countries to Canada. They can't work because they don't have a work permit. A Poilievre government would sign agreements with the provinces to encourage the recognition of immigrant professional qualifications, and that would happen in 60 days so that they can start earning a living and give Canadians more plumbers, engineers and physicians and workers we need. Mr. Charest now. While I'm very in favour of immigration, this is something that I showed when I was Quebec Premier. We signed an agreement with France on the recognition of qualifications. It was the most advanced agreement in the world, but immigration must be orderly at the same time. Now, the Roxham Road is a place for refugees to enter, but we have to renegotiate our agreement with the Americans and with safe third countries to make sure that we're able to actually ensure that immigration is orderly. For the future, however, we have to make Canada the country, the #1 country to attract talent from across the planet. And if we do that, we will be the country who holds the future in its hands. Mr. Aitchison, over to you. Well, Canada is an incredible country. We attract the most brilliant and best in the world, physicians, engineers, scientists, and other qualified workers from the whole world. Immigrants help us to diversify our communities, to make our country more prosperous as well. As Prime Minister, I would be very, very proud to continue to build on the work done by Prime Minister Harper to attract qualified workers and to reduce the time it takes to process immigration applications so that the most talented in the world can come to Canada to work. The 4-minute open debate starts. Ms. Lewis, you have the floor. Our priority must be family reunification. It must be to attract qualified workers and to protect people who are fleeing persecution in the world. We must facilitate access to work to help employers find workers for the positions they have. Mr. Charest. Well, there's a lot that needs to be done in immigration. The first thing to do is, the fact is that the current department is dysfunctional. It takes far too long to actually deal with applications. So there are people who are unable, or companies which are unable to actually bring in the workers they need. So first of all, we have to sort things out in the department. We have to take decisive action. We have to recruit more international students as well. That's an advantage for us. We do that in Quebec. Students coming to study in Quebec are partially integrated. They have Canadian and Quebec qualifications. This is the quickest way of recruiting new talent in Canada and also in Quebec. Mr. Brown. Please keep your applause for later.
Maintenant, chaque jour, j'ai
Well, on a daily basis, I've been working very, very hard to build our party and to attract new members. I want to build a multicultural party, but there's a problem.
M. Poilievre, car le-
As Mr. Poilievre has said,
notre système.
he supports Pat King, who has attacked our immigration system. Mr. Poilievre said it's important to use Anglo-Saxon vocabulary. How can he actually hope to expand our party when he uses that terminology? People want to build a bigger party, a party that can lead this country. That's not true, Mr. Brown. I rejected Mr. McKing. I've spoken out against him and against what he said. I've said that openly. I'm open to immigration and to diversity. Now, people have said that you're dividing conservatives, you're dividing groups. You say one thing to one group, and you say quite the opposite to a different group. This is the reason why no one should believe you.
Rencontré Pat King et Pierre Poilievre.
You can't believe Pierre Poilievre.
Notre parti.
You never tell the truth. You're not telling the truth now either. Mr. Baber, you had your hand up. Please keep your applause for later. Mr. Baber. Thank you very much. On Saturday, my friend and I go to our favorite bistro, and there's the waiter there told me that they have to close the bistro because they can't find employees, they can't find staff. Canada's immigration system doesn't work. We need legal immigration, quite simply. I'd like to say the following. There's been a lot of focus on immigration levels. Do you think that Canada has reached its limits in terms of integrating new immigrants? We have to adjust the figures in terms of our ability to integrate people. Immigration must mean integration into Canada. How do we do integration? Well, we do that through jobs, through the recognition of skills and qualifications. We do it through the language. We do it when families integrate into a community. Immigration must mean integration into society. And if Canada is able to do that, we'll have a foot will be ahead of other countries. Public safety now. Recently, several murders have been associated with the Hells Angels. We all know that organized crime is a major problem. Drug trafficking, people trafficking, violent crime. As Prime Minister, what would you do to deal with organized crime? And we'll start with Mr. Patrick Brown. Well, as a mayor of the Greater Toronto area, I know firsthand that the organized crime is an issue. Now, the problem is that we need a Prime Minister who will protect our borders. Because if you look at the origins of drugs and firearms, it's from across the border. Last year, in Toronto, 84 people used contraband firearms in crime. There are problems with our borders, and the current Prime Minister is doing nothing to deal with that issue. Mr. Aitchison, you have the floor. Well, I think it's necessary to cooperate with the provinces on a grand scale to address the problem, I think. Thank you, Mr. Aitchison. Dr. Lewis. We must invest the necessary resources to reduce organized crime. They are the ones trafficking people and weapons. Most victims of people trafficking in Canada come from the most vulnerable populations, unfortunately, mainly Aboriginal women. These are vulnerable Canadians, and they must have our priority. We must protect them. Mr. Baber, thank you very much. I was a lawyer for 12 years before I was elected. Canadian laws are strange. We give criminals far too much freedom. We must reform the criminal code to be able to prosecute organised crime and violent crime. Thank you. Mr. Charest. Well, security and safety is a major issue for a Prime Minister, the security of Canadians, be it protecting it against gangs, street gangs or organised crime. The street gangs, as you know, are terrorising our cities currently. In Montreal, for example, a couple of years ago, we didn't have that crime in Montreal. Now it's across the city. It's happening on a daily basis. In broad daylight, we have to take firm steps to deal with street gangs. In Quebec, for example, Quebec took initiatives, took steps to deal with street gangs. We had a very focused measure against organised crime. We also have to ban handguns. We have to stop the import of handguns. Mr. Poilievre, well, first of all, we have to strengthen our border. According to Toronto Police, 80% of weapons used in crime don't come from Canada, but they come from the US, and they're brought in here illegally across the border. So we have to monitor more closely imports into Canada. I'm against Justin Trudeau's attempts to reduce sentences for criminals using weapons in violent armed crime. That approach allows criminals to go back onto the streets and to continue to terrorize ordinary law-abiding Canadians. We have to protect our border, and we also have to put real criminals behind bars to protect Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. Now, the six-way debate, Mr. Brown, you have the floor. I'd like to add it's important to have a discussion on bail. In Brampton 2 years ago, there was a criminal who was freed 5 times. And 5 times they broke the law against. And the last time they were freed, they killed their partner. And that's the reality of our current justice system. It's important for the Conservative Party to change that. And that must be a priority. It's my priority. Dr. Lewis. Well, I'll overhaul gun laws. We must look at the issue of guns being trafficked across the border. I want to respect gun owners who respect the law, of course, but the problem with the border is very, very serious. It's serious for the safety and security of this country. Mr. Poilievre. Mr. Brown, you have no credibility on law and order. You were found guilty of having broken the integrity rules. You've said that the money you used to buy your $2 million home came from your family. But after investigation, we now know that this money came from someone that was a candidate for you. How can you forget where $375,000 comes from, Mr. Brown? Whoops. You thought it came from your family, but all of a sudden you realized during the investigation that, in fact, the money had come from a candidate. No one believes you when you say that you're in favor of law and order, when you were found guilty yourself of having broken the law by hiding that payment. You're just like Justin Trudeau, who hides the gifts people give to him as well, and the donations people give to him. Mr. Brown. The only person here who has broken the law, the electoral law, is Mr. Poilievre. At the same time, I won't take any lessons from Mr. Poilievre. He's a person who has made secret deals. It's much easier for Poilievre to attack other Conservatives. That's his policy. That's his approach, really, isn't it? Mr. Fortin, the issue is about public safety, right, Mr. Fortin? Just wanted to remind you of that fact. Yes, you're quite right, says Ms. Lewis. You're quite right, Mr. Charest. Perhaps Mr. Poilievre misunderstood. I'll tell you what I would do. I would increase sentences for those attacking police officers, ambulance workers. I want to deal with gangs. I want to deal with hate crimes. I want to help women who are victims of violence. I'll make sure that coercion becomes a criminal act. $100 million for groups supporting women. And I want to talk or work with Senator Boisvenu as well on his initiative. It's a bit ironic to hear Mr. Poilievre talk about law and order. He's the one who supported an illegal blockade in Ottawa. Remember that? Remember that? Please, order, please, order.
S'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît, on perd du temps.
Please, we're wasting time. Please be quiet. Can I answer that question, please?
On va malheureusement devoir sauter à la troisième.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to move on to the third theme on inflation. Inflation is creating havoc in the Canadian economy. What would you do to help Canadian families who are suffering from the increase in food prices, gas prices, or housing prices? Mr. Poilievre, we'll start with you. We have to recognize the cause of inflation. The inflation driving deficit is raising inflation. Taxes raise prices. We have to eliminate the deficit. And we have to stop printing money, which created inflation in the first place. We also have to eliminate the carbon tax. The carbon tax, which increases the price of gas for all Canadians. We also have to suspend all taxes on gas for the summer because families are in crisis. They're not able to pay their bills, make ends meet. By getting rid of those taxes and stopping printing money and getting rid of deficit to allow people to buy food, houses and gas so they can have a strong purchasing power. Mr. Charest, thank you. Well, look, inflation is at 6.8%. It's rising more quickly than wages. It's a major issue for families, especially low-income families. There are two things that have to be done here. We have to reduce government spending, which fuels inflation, first of all, and also we have to, this is what we did during the recession, is to reduce taxes to make sure that middle-class families and low-income families are able to actually keep more of their income. This allowed Quebec to emerge from the recession stronger than any other country in the world. Mr. Poilievre is no longer talking about firing the governor of the Bank of Canada. He's no longer talking about that tonight. At least that's one thing. Mr. Aitchison, there's no miracle solution to deal with inflation. You can't fire bureaucrats. You can't stop it with cryptocurrency. It's a real challenge, and that means we need real solutions to deal with it. We would get rid of the carbon tax. We would save money on heating and gas. We would get rid of supply management. That means that you would save money on your groceries to create new opportunities for Canadian agriculture as well. Dr. Lewis, over to you.
Inflation in Canada has been exacerbated by problems in the supply chain, as well as by the carbon tax. Both have been established by the federal government. I would eliminate the carbon tax because it makes life less affordable for Canadians. Mr. Poilievre is in favor of cryptocurrency as protection against inflation. I don't agree with him. He is absolutely wrong.
S'il vous plaît, Monsieur Baber.
Mr. Baber.
Merci.
Thank you.
Il est important de reconnaître
It is important to recognize what's causing the inflation,
de dollars que nous
and it's not just the 600
avons en
million that we borrowed or printed last year.
économie.
It is the foundations of our economy.
Mondial a besoin
The world supply chain was stopped a number of times,
pour satisfaire
and
la meilleure chose qui
we couldn't meet demand in our own economy. The only thing we can do to fight inflation is to
je ne permettre
bring stability to the markets. I would never allow the economy to stop. I would never go to lockdown. I would restore discipline within the government, abolish the carbon tax,
les impôts sur
and reduce income taxes.
J'ai déjà démontré comment
Mr. Brown, I have already shown how to fight inflation in Brampton. I froze taxes, I balanced the budget, and at the same time, I supported more new housing than any other town in Ontario, 30,000 new housing units
largement
and 15,000 secondary housing units.
Cyrus monte.
I would add,
Leslyn Lewis a dit
as Leslyn Lewis said, that when Pierre Poilievre says that you can eliminate inflation by using Bitcoin, that's very odd. This is how you get your grandparents to lose their life savings. I don't understand what he's thinking.
Dans le débat à 6, Monsieur.
We are now moving into the six-way debate. Mr. Poilievre, you start.
Parce que lui, il supporte
Well, of course he doesn't understand. First of all, that's not what I said. I want people to have the freedom to make their own investment decisions. But you, Mr. Brown, you said that you were against the carbon tax. But after that, you became pro-carbon tax once you became leader of the Ontario Conservative Party. And in Quebec, the man who brought us the most inflation is Jean Charest, the most inflationary of politicians. And this is absolutely true. And you'll hear him. He increased sales tax. He increased gas taxes. He put in place a carbon tax. He put in place a health tax. That is his record. That is his very own record. When I was cutting taxes with the Harper government, and that included reducing sales tax, Mr. Charest was actually increasing one tax after another. And taxes in Quebec increased by 30% when he was at the helm. Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown?
Le journaliste Brian Lilly,
The journalist Brian Lilly, who is well respected,
dans la semaine dernière, dans ce article,
said last week in an article that Pierre has flip-flopped 5 times on the carbon tax. He has changed position 5 times.
quand tu changes votre position encore,
Brian Lilly explained how your position has changed 5 times.
quand l'autre personne parle, je veux
And Pierre wants to talk over me, but let me say what Pierre doesn't understand. His position on Bitcoin is the same position as El Salvador's,
de leurs finances.
and that isn't going to work.
qui nous écoute à la maison.
There are Canadians
Pourtant, on est
watching at home who are paying $2 a liter for gas, but we have the second largest oil reserves in the world. So what are you going to do to change this?
rester sur le même thème.
Well, to remain on the same theme as Dr. Lewis, I think that
Congédiement,
Mr. Poilievre really doesn't know what he's talking about, as she said. There are other things we can do to break inflation. For example, we could establish with
à tous les Canadiens, toutes les
daycare, reduce costs.
ça aurait un effet immédiat.
That's got an immediate effect, and I am the only, well, not the only, but among those who have said and made a commitment to maintaining the child care agreements negotiated between the federal government and the provinces. I wonder whether Mr. Poilievre would keep those agreements in place. Maybe he's going to skirt around the issue as he did around the abortion issue. Mr. Charest, you're the one who's circumventing things and beating around the bush. When I asked if you were in favor of tax increases, well, that's what you did in Quebec. You increased sales tax twice. You increased the gas tax. You increased the carbon tax. You created a health tax. A health tax that didn't even help the healthcare system, but led to the longest waiting lists in emergency rooms ever. That's your record. Well, I think that Mr. Poilievre is not very well informed by his advisors. All he has to do is look at the public accounts. When I left, people were paying $1 billion less in tax. When I finished my term, Quebec's credit rating went up 3 times. That is the truth. That is reality. Well, I'm sorry, but I am told that we are taking too much time and we'll have to cut into the debating time. So please do remain silent for the remaining exchange. Let's move to health. The Canada Health Act guarantees health transfers to the provinces if they have a public health system in place. The pandemic highlighted failings and gaps in our healthcare systems. The federal government is envisaging a new model. As Prime Minister, would you apply the Canada Health Act in full, or would you give the provinces more flexibility? Mr. Baber, you begin. Canada has one of the healthcare systems in the world with the most failings in the world. It's among the worst in the OCDE. With an aging population, it's going to need a lot of capital. We can look at more healthcare delivery options without changing the health insurance system and by respecting the principles set out in the Canada Health Act. As Prime Minister, I would invest and commit federal money to this. This is something I have talked about with the provinces. Mr. Aitchison, we don't need to debate this for too long. We need to look at other models like the one in the Netherlands and improve our healthcare system. The system is based on the promise that the federal government pays 50% of healthcare costs. That is the fundamental premise underpinning our system, but we've never done that, and now the federal government is paying only 20%. There are no easy answers, but we will discuss the issue with the provinces and work with them to improve our healthcare system. Thank you. Mr. Charest. Thank you, Mr. Fortin. I've formulated a policy on this, and the last substantive agreement negotiated with the federal government was in 2004 with the Council of the Federation. That agreement fully respects all areas of Quebec jurisdiction, and it provides for asymmetric federalism. There is an increase of 6% a year, and it was approved by Stephen Harper, who was leader of the opposition at the time, but I consulted him because I wanted him to support him. I would open up the Canada Health Act, allow the provinces to innovate, and allow the private sector to contribute to making the healthcare system work more effectively with a single payer. I would put $10 billion into health in full and fully recognize foreign qualifications for people who have qualified abroad, professionals who have qualified abroad. Mr. Brown, the pandemic showed us that the healthcare system in this country is broken. When the pandemic began, 91% of hospital beds were occupied. In the U.S., it was only 63%. And that is why I supported increasing health transfers to the provinces. But at the same time, I don't support a private system. I believe that the best way of helping the provinces is to respond by giving them what they're asking for, and that is increased health transfers in compliance with provincial autonomy.
I advocate for stable funding for our system. This is what I advocated for when I was a member of the government, the Harper government, for more than 10 years. Secondly, we have to work in partnership with the province to accelerate the recognition of foreign medical credentials. There are thousands of people who are qualified to work in a system but who don't have work permits. So I would encourage the provinces to create a 60-day guarantee. In a period of 60 days, once an immigrant applies to work in the healthcare system, they should receive a response, and these immigrants should be helped to prepare before they even arrive in Canada. Dr. Lewis. As leader, I will work with the provinces and the territories to correct the weaknesses in our healthcare system. Private companies like Walmart and Shoppers Drug Mart have worked with the government to provide vaccines against COVID. It's possible now to do the same thing with other services as well. We need a public inquiry on the management of the pandemic by the Liberals. So we need our own pandemic plan as well. The six-way debate, Mr. Barber. All right. Okay, no. Anybody want to intervene or to add something? Mr. Poilievre, I'd like to add that compulsory vaccination has done nothing to improve this situation. Everyone should have a free choice to make their own choice. I decided to get vaccinated, but I respect the fact that others decided not to do that. Now, these people are separated from their work. Mr. Brown tried to actually impose more stringent vaccine passports in Brampton. He tried to close arenas to young kids so that he could play hockey with his friends. It's complete democracy. This isn't what a leader should be about. People should have the freedom to choose. Mr. Charest has his hand up. Thank you very much, Mr. Fortin.
It's there's no one other than Mr. Poilievre who, in answering a question of health, takes you to a hockey arena. That is really not where we should be going when it comes to health. And I'm going to really stress this. Something that's never been done in Canada, we're opening up the Canada Health Act. So expect us to be aggressively attacked by the federal Liberals on this, and we have to be very firm on this. Our healthcare system is working very badly. We're paying a lot of money because there is a capacity issue. We need to have the courage to change the system and to innovate. I would allow the private sector to participate, for example, where clinics could carry out knee operations and hip operations in agreement with the federal government, could conduct diagnoses. This would free up beds in hospitals. And if we did that, our healthcare system would have worked much better during the COVID system, and there would have been fewer restrictions needed than those that had to be imposed. Mr. Brown, I want to add that Brampton is one of the only large cities in this country which did not actually have a vaccine mandate. I protected the rights of everyone to make a choice. But at the same time, we're in a battle on rights. And Pierre Poilievre, hiding in his cellar, sends out 3,000 tweets, and not a single time does he talk about vaccine mandates. He started talking about it when the leadership race began. That's when he started. I've been quoted in the newspapers as saying that vaccine passports needed to be broadened. You said that the private sector should play an active role in the healthcare system. You said by brandishing a credit card that people would end up having to pay for healthcare. Mr. Charest, when you were Premier of Quebec, waiting times in emergency rooms went up from 16 hours to 20 hours. That is your record on health, Mr. Charest. First of all, Mr. Poilievre is talking about 15 years ago. Welcome to the new world, Mr. Poilievre. There's been COVID since then. Secondly, the Alliance on Waiting Times found that Quebec ranked second in Canada for waiting times, Mr. Fortin. We were second. So, Mr. Poilievre, there again, I don't know who compiles your data. Maybe you need new staff.
On va au dossier du thème des langues officielles.
We will now move to the theme official languages. Our country has two official languages, English and French. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has appointed a Governor-General who does not speak French and a unilingual Lieutenant Governor in New Brunswick, which is the only bilingual province, and he is maintaining those choices. Do you believe that the highest positions in this land, like Governor-General, Supreme Court judges, or federal ministers, should be able to speak both official languages before taking up their posts? Mr. Brown, you begin. I think it's important to speak both of Canada's official languages, and that is why, if I become Prime Minister, I will support immersion programs for all Canadians who wish to learn French. At the same time, I want to add that what happened in Quebec with Bill 96 is something that runs counter to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada. People want to speak and should be able to speak both official languages, regardless of where in Quebec they live. That discussion is taking place in Quebec today. Is this legislation appropriate? So my question to Mr. Poilievre and to other candidates is this: why?
Francophone ou
Dr. Lewis, regardless of whether you're Francophone or Anglophone, the most qualified person should get the job. But I do believe that that person should make a commitment to learn both official languages or the other official language. It is very important to be able to communicate with all Canadians. In my view, and for me, learning French has been a wonderful experience. Mr. Aitchison, as leader of the Conservative Party, I would maintain both official languages in all regions of this country. But I do agree with Mr. Brown that, like Bill 21, Bill 96 is a bad bill. Politics of fear and anger should not prevail in this country. I will do everything I can to convince Quebecers that this is not the right approach. This is not a good approach. Mr. Charest? Well, there's one thing I'd like to say first. French, and we're in Quebec right now. French, protecting French is a sacred duty of our elected officials. And promoting it and assuring its survival is a sacred duty. In the highest positions of the country, because that's your question, those who take on these high positions must be, in my view, bilingual and able at least to communicate in both languages. That reflects who we are. And I find it unfortunate that in Canada we don't speak enough of how this enriches us. The fact of having French as an official language gives Canada tremendous visibility in the world, and that is also something we need to protect.
Miss, keep your applause later, please. While the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms makes French and English official languages on an equal footing, what the Legault government is doing through Bill 96 is unacceptable.
parce qu'il rendrait la communication plus facile avec ses paysiens.
What he should be doing is making communication with other people easier. The Conservative Party must be clear that it will defend Quebecers and that we will never tolerate this type of behaviour. I'll use all legal means to defend the rights of all Canadians, including Quebecers. Mr. Poilievre, the protection of the French language is something that is a priority for me. My great-grandfather came from France to Saskatchewan directly, and he lived in Léoville. When I was born in Calgary, my father told me that that if I was able to write my Christmas list in French, Santa would be much more generous. So I commit to protect the French language. That's why my kid goes to a French language daycare. I will promote and protect French and English across the country because Canadians have the right to get service from the federal government in both official languages, and I'll protect them as Prime Minister. Thank you. I'll now open up the debate to the six of you. I'll repeat the question. The question was on the appointment of senior officials to the major positions in the country. Should they be bilingual? Mr. Brown, if you're Prime Minister, would you appoint only bilingual people to these positions? Well, I think it's important to find a bilingual person for these important positions in the country. It's important to protect the French language across the country as well. That's why when I was leader of the Ontario Conservative Party, I supported a bill to create a French language university because I want to protect French in Ontario. That was a priority for me. But one of the problems we have now is that there are people who speak both languages, and they have one position in English Canada and one position in French Canada. In Quebec, Pierre Poilievre is in favour of Bill 21, but in English Canada, he's against it. He's in favour of increasing the number of seats here in Quebec. When he's speaking to English Canadians, he's against it. He changes his position based on who he's speaking to and where he is. That's not true. I came out against Bill 21 here in Quebec, and I came out against the bill elsewhere in the country as well. I'm against Bill 21. I'd vote against it if I was member of the National Assembly. I would vote against it if I was Prime Minister. That's the question. That's the question. Will you let me answer, please? If this bill was tabled in the House of Commons, I would vote against it. That's not the question. That's not the question. You change your position. You flip-flop. I came out against the bill across the country, in all parts of the country, and I hope that Quebec will not adopt this legislation. I'm in favour of freedom of speech and freedom of religion across the country, including in Quebec. Let's bring you back to the debate in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada. There are targets for Francophone immigration, but we never reach them. How can we actually reach those goals, those targets? Well, it all comes down to attracting people and how to do that. Jobs, integrating people into the community, recognizing qualifications. French language students who come to Canada, there are about 12,000 of them who come to Quebec on a yearly basis, and they pay tuition fees which are very, very reasonable. And I created a program in Quebec to allow these students to become citizens very, very quickly. We shouldn't allow Mr. Poilievre to get away with what he's saying. Bilingualism means that you say the same thing in English and in French, no matter where you are. That's what I've been doing, says Mr. Poilievre. My question for Mr. Poilievre is the following. He said in Quebec that if Bill 21, he said this in French, came before the Supreme Court, the government wouldn't intervene. I'm sorry. He didn't say the same thing to English Canadians. Are you bilingual or not? Tell us. Tell us, Mr. Poilievre. Mr. Charest, this is what you said here in Quebec. You said it's... I won't be taking this to the courts. I won't be actually taking it to the courts. You said that you were against court action in French in Quebec. That's what you said. Answer the question. You said you wouldn't you wouldn't tackle it in the courts. So that's what you said in French here in Quebec. Ms. Lewis, thank you very much. Well, language is very, very important for Quebec and Quebecers. Quebecers deserve to get service in French. I will continue to learn French and to improve my French, and I will do immersion in French. I want to speak to Quebecers to know what's important for them. What are your priorities? Thank you. Mr. Baber. Well, my government would defend Canadians against Bill 21. It's unacceptable for Canadians to be required to choose. The debate's over. The 4 minutes are up. Sixth question now. Trade and supply chains. The pandemic highlighted the vulnerability of our supply chains across the world. We saw that Canada is dependent on various international suppliers, including those in China, even when it comes to an issue of national security, PPE, for example. As Prime Minister, what would you do to deal with the challenge of world supply chains? Mr. Aitchison will start us off. Well, I think that we need to balance our budget so we can start to pay down our debt and so that we can reduce Canadian taxes. We have to deal with the housing crisis as well, and we have to put an end to exclusion zones, and we have to work with cities on health, and we have to build more houses as well. We have to support our specialized trades, and we have to make sure that we have the workers that we need to build a better Canada. Thank you very much, Mr. Charest. It's on supply chains, the question, right? Well, this is a very, very important topic for our economic future. We depend on trade for a living. Our GDP is based on trade. Supply chains are very, very important for us in the car sector, the auto sector, in aeronautics as well, in transportation, in recreational vehicles as well. These have to be secured. What does it mean? It means that we have to avoid being too dependent on one specific country, and we should also make sure that we have enough of our own products, the products that we need, pharmaceuticals and PPE or health products to deal with future crises. So supply chains are an important issue for our country. Mr. Lewis, well, many of the products that we import could be manufactured in Canada. We must be self-sufficient. We must create more jobs here at home. Thank you, Mr. Baber. The government, well, the pandemic undermined world supply chains, and what we produce here is not enough for our needs. So we have to create a stable market. I would never allow the economy to be shut down again. I believe in free trade. I don't believe in protectionism. We are all Canadians, so we have to work harder and in a smarter way than any other country in the world. We have to increase our production. We have to ensure that the country is competitive with other countries. This means less government interference in the Canadian economy. Mr. Poilievre, but it's bureaucracy, red tape and taxes which are undermining our supply chains. We're 35th out of 36 OECD countries in terms of the time it takes to get a building permit. At the same time, we have C-69, which prevents the production of energy here in Canada and prevents the building of pipelines. I want to get rid of that red tape and those taxes to allow us to produce what we need here in Canada and to allow us to produce more of our own energy. I would like to allow Newfoundland to increase its production of oil to replace all the oil we import from other countries, especially from dictatorships. I want to do that over 5 years. Mr. Brown, well, the pandemic has shown that Canada didn't have enough capacity to produce its own essential goods, and that begs the question why we don't have that capacity. Why, over the past 20 years, have we lost manufacturing businesses? And one of the reasons is because of taxation levels. It's important to be competitive. It's important to create an environment where businesses can expand across the country. And under the Liberal Party government, every year there are new taxes, and it's more and more difficult for businesses to expand in Canada. Now, a six-way debate. Would you like to add something, Mr. Aitchison? No. Supply chains. I was talking about our dependency on China. The manufacturing sector here in Canada has been in decline for the past 3 decades. Wages are stagnating. What should we do to breathe new life into that sector? How can we actually be less dependent on supply chains? Well, first of all, the manufacturing sector in Quebec is in better health than in the rest of Canada, and that's because of the hard work of Quebecers, I think. Having said that, of course, in terms of supply chains, because it's the economy we live in, that won't change. We have to make sure that we have guaranteed access. We have to be less dependent on one specific country. There has to be redundancy. Mr. Fortin, I'd like to say 2 things. If there's one regret I have today, there was a conference in Asia where Mr. Biden has created a new zone in the Pacific. Mr. Trudeau wasn't there. He wasn't invited. Not only he wasn't there, it's as if Canada doesn't exist, and that shows the status of Canada in the world today. If I become Prime Minister of Canada, this is a topic I know. I was part of the European Free Trade Agreement. I negotiated the Labour Mobility Agreement as well. That's going to change. The second thing I'd like to say is the following. Our supply chains were affected during the blockade. There were thousands of Canadians who lost their jobs. They were laid off because people blocked the borders. I would pass legislation which would give powers to the police to stop that and to prevent that. And people like Mr. Poilievre, who might be tempted to support these types of people, would find themselves in hot water. They would have to be accountable. Mr. Poilievre, I'll give you time to react, but Ms. Lewis was first. Ms. Lewis, Dr. Lewis, our energy sector is the cleanest and ethical in the world. Canadians must be able to get back to work in the energy sector. For example, in Quebec, the LNG projects LNG products would allow us to replace Russian oil in Europe. At the same time, we could repatriate resources to Quebec, and we could create jobs as well. Mr. Poilievre, Mr. Charest claims to be in favour of law and order. Mr. Charest, I remember the Charbonneau Commission. Yeah, remember that? I remember it well.
Et les Québécois.
And Quebecers remember that as well. Truckers have no lessons to learn from you about law and order. But you shouldn't be lecturing other people either. Jean Charest shouldn't be lecturing people about blocking jobs. He was against the development of natural gas. He created a legal blockade against the production of liquid natural gas here in Quebec. If he'd allowed us to produce LNG today, we could have been exporting LNG to Europe to break their dependency on Russia. Now we're not able to do that because politicians like Justin Trudeau and Jean Charest and Liberals have stopped us producing oil and gas in this country. And that's why we find ourselves in today's situation. Mr. Brown had his hand up on this. Well, all candidates here on this stage understand that it's important to build pipelines, but the reality is that with Pierre Poilievre. He can't build a new pipeline because to build a new pipeline you need support from Aboriginals, and he has history on this. If he becomes party leader, no new pipelines will be built in Canada. And the reality is that the world needs our oil, and this is why it's very important for Canada to ensure that the next leader is not Pierre Poilievre. Thank you. Mr. Poilievre has raised the issue of the Charbonneau Commission. I'd like to read an extract of the Commission. The facts presented to the Charbonneau Commission have not shown a direct or an indirect link with the Quebec government. That was only la chance. A commissioner in the Charbonneau Commission who said that I can lend you my notes because I know that your staff have not prepared you well. The seventh theme, winning more seats in Quebec. Our party has never managed to win more than 12 seats in Quebec. However, since 2004, we've seen many expressions of cultural conservatism in Quebec. We celebrate our history and we take legislative steps to protect our culture and our language. If you become leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, how do you intend to win over Quebecers who value the cultural legacy of Canada and Quebec? Mr. Charest, we'll start with you. Well, that's a question I like a lot. Because in the elections in 2019, 2021 in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada, there was a lot of support for people who put forward a solid economic plan. The Liberals didn't win the election in 2019 or 2021. It was the Conservatives that lost that election. If there's something that I would do, Mr. Fortin, there are 32 bloc members in Quebec. Well, basically, they should be preparing for retirement. And I think we should put them out to pasture. If there's one thing that I know how to do is to win elections against the Bloc and the PQ. I can do that again for you. Mr. Aitchison, we can win in Quebec in the same way as we can win elsewhere in the country as well by governing with respect, by putting forward ideas on how to improve the lives of Canadians and Quebecers. We have to say the same thing in both official languages across the country. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Well, it's important, I think, to explain that our values, our Conservative values, are also Quebec values. It's important to explain that it's only our party that can protect the interests of Quebecers. And at the same time, it's important to create a party, to grow our party with new volunteers, with new members. And when I look at Quebec members, each riding is very, very small. To win an election, you need a big party behind you. And this is why the leadership race is very important, to reach out to new volunteers and members and to create a strong team here in Quebec. Mr. Poilievre. We can win in Quebec in the same way as we win across the rest of the country. It's by giving Quebecers back their purchasing powers. Because of inflation, Quebecers are paying far too much for food and gas. There are young people, 35-year-old, living in their parents' basements because they can't afford a home. I predicted this would happen when the government started printing money. We have to pay down the deficit. We have to reduce taxes that Mr. Charest and Mr. Brown support. We have to give back purchasing power to Quebecers, and we have to win in the suburbs of Quebec. That's how we'll win in Quebec. It's by sharing the same message, a message of improving spending power for Quebecers and Canadians as well. Mr. Vatters.
I believe that the issues important to Quebecers are the same issues that are important to all Canadians. And people are concerned about the state of the economy. Quebecers are concerned about affordability. There are many Quebecers who fear for their rights. which are under attack by the Legault government. The Conservative Party should not be afraid to defend all Canadians, including Quebecers. We need to come to help them so that they can maintain their ability to communicate, their ability to continue practicing their faith. I challenge everyone on this stage to say no to the Legault government's bill. Learning French is one of the best experiences of my life. I love French language, history, and culture. I love Quebec deeply. I believe that we need to give everyone the opportunity to learn French. I think that the education system must do a better job of teaching both official languages. Thank you, Dr. Lewis. The six-way debate, Mr. Charest, you can begin, but I'd like to add something. My question was on the cultural heritage, on protecting language and culture. We know that Quebec has passed Bill 21 and Bill 96. There will be challenges likely going to the Supreme Court. Are you happy with having such decisions made by the courts and not by elected officials? Well, adopting legislation is something that is the prerogative of the National Assembly, be it Bill 21 or Bill 96. It would be the Prime Minister of, it's not up to the Prime Minister of Canada to take it to the courts. But the Prime Minister of Canada shouldn't be neutral. We're not neutral about our own legislation, and the government must take a stand on its own legislation. Quebecers want frank, open answers on these issues. They want to know who they can trust. What counts for them is the economy, a strong economy, and a national government that can elect candidates across the country. So how do you trust somebody who's talking about Bitcoin, about firing the governor of the Bank of Canada, but who cannot give an honest answer on Bill 21? He did not say that he would participate in a challenge to Bill 21 before the courts. He can't answer frankly because we're in Quebec, so he's not giving a frank answer. He's not giving an answer on abortion. He's pro-choice, but he's pro-life.
S'il vous plaît.
Please.
S'il vous plaît.
Please. Mr. Poilievre, you can reply, after which it'll be Mr. Brown. I've already said what my position is. I am pro-choice. And I said so clearly, and you recognized it in the English language debate. You heard me, and you recognized that. I am against Bill 21. I will always be against it.
No, j'ai dit pro-choice.
I said pro-choice, pro-choix, pro-choice. It's the same thing in both languages. Does that work for you, Mr. Charest? Does that work for you? So, Mr. Charest, I have already stated my position. It's against Bill 21, and I've said so in Quebec, here. And I've said so tonight. I see that the federal government has announced that it would challenge the legislation. I would not overturn the federal government's decision to challenge the bill. I will always be against that bill. But, Mr. Charest, you said that you would help the separatists retire, but it's the separatists who made you retire. You lost your own seat. You lost your own seat. You are the least popular in Quebec than you have ever been. Mr. Brown, 10 seconds. The issue is on Bill 96, isn't it? No, Bill 21. Mr. Poilievre, please add your name to the very long list of people who have foreseen the end of my political career. There is a long list. Oh, Quebecers announced the end of your political career, Mr. Charest. Pierre Poilievre said to a newspaper in Ottawa that the government of Canada, if one would not take part in a challenge, a legal challenge to Bill 21. So that's your position in an Ottawa newspaper. You are changing your position. And here I'm telling you tonight that nobody should lose a job because of their faith, because they're wearing a hijab, a turban, a kippah. It is very important for our party to protect freedom and justice. That is a conservative value. I will answer the question. I support the goal of protecting French, but I believe that the $500 sanction could alienate Anglophones and create resentment. So what's needed are opportunities to learn the language. The eighth theme is foreign policy, and Canada and China. The Chinese Communist Party has taken control on Hong Kong, and we're expecting an attack on Taiwan's sovereignty, which is a crucial partner. It produces 92% of the chips we use every day, the computer chips. They're produced in China. What, as Prime Minister, would be your attitude to China, and how would you work to protect our interests in the South China Sea? It is important to always defend human rights. That is a Canadian value. But at the same time, it is important to support trade important to Canada. For example, LNG in liquid natural gas in British Columbia. Sending that LNG to China is a way that Canada can help China fight climate change. And it is a way to improve relations with China that became worse under Prime Minister Harper. Mr. Charest, we need to review our foreign policy. We can see that our U.S. allies were always with us, and now that's no longer happening. China is emerging as a superpower. We can't look at it as anything else. And since we were not invited to Mr. Biden's meeting with 13 Indo-Pacific countries to create a new economic zone, well, why is that? Because we are insignificant in the eyes of our allies. We're not there. We're missing in action in Asia. We need to reach economic agreements with ASEAN countries, and we have to contribute to the security of that zone with our allies, which are the U.S., Japan, South Korea. Mr. Poilievre, I believe that at the same time we can advance our economic interests with a large country like China while defending our principles and values. And that is why I support the rights of Taiwan, which is a democracy in Asia, and we need to maintain good relations with Taiwan. We also need to stand up for human rights in China, and that is why I voted to condemn the treatment of Uyghur people, of Christians, and of other minorities in China. We can do both at the same time. That is what we did with the Harper government, and that is what we will do when I become Prime Minister. Mr. Baber, I have lived in a communist country, the Soviet Union. We must never be afraid of facing what's wrong. Justin Trudeau was too easy on China. China is putting Uyghur people in concentration camps. They are stealing our intellectual property. They are threatening to turn Taiwan into another Hong Kong. I am not afraid of China, and I want a conversation with our allies. It is time to face up to China, to stand up to China. Trade with China is no longer based on cooperation, but rather on confrontation. That is the new reality. We need to establish new policies that take this new reality into account. Thank you. Mr. Aitchison. China uses its military and economic power to sow instability, undermine world security in the Indo-Pacific region, and violates human rights in the most flagrant way we are seeing in the world today. It's all very well for Mr. Trudeau to ban Huawei, but what we need to do is examine all threats to security created by the hesitations of Justin Trudeau's government. We need to recognize Taiwan as an independent, sovereign, democratic country. Thank you. 4 minutes, six-way debate. Mr. Brown, you begin. I think we need to say that at the beginning of the pandemic, there was already a problem. There were hate crimes against Asian Canadians, and this is something we always need to fight. We saw it at the beginning of this pandemic. And this is why I asked all Canadians to denounce hate speech. Mr. Poilievre, we just needed to look at your Twitter feed. I see, condemned in a public court. One moment. Mr. Charest, you obtained a contract with Huawei. I know that your supporters don't want to hear the truth.
S'il vous plaît, s'il vous plaît, s'il vous plaît.
Please, please. We don't know what you were paid for. According to Huawei, you worked on the 5G network. But now, even liberals have recognized that the 5G network constituted a threat, that Huawei's 5G system constituted a threat. It doesn't take a secret briefing to know that this is a relationship you did not disclose with any transparency. So here's my question, Mr. Charest. First of all, are you going to disclose how much you were paid by Huawei? And secondly, are you going to disclose the contract that you or your company had with Huawei so that Canadians learn all the details of the work you did for Huawei? Yes or no? Are you going to disclose it? I understand that Mr. Poilievre complains about my supporters, but you can't prevent people from liking what you say. Mr. Fortin, I've had the opportunity to answer this question a number of times. The first thing I'd like to say is that I never worked on any issue that would jeopardize the interests of my country. And secondly, I am proud to have contributed something confirmed that has been confirmed, that I contributed to helping releasing Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. I took a very clear position, and I should go even further. I think we should completely review security legislation covering telecommunications and review our natural resources strategies. That is my position, and it is founded on solid experience, my experience in foreign policy. I think the question was on protecting our interests in China. Pierre Poilievre, this is my time. Pierre Poilievre is the only Canadian to have the support of a Huawei executive. You're the only Canadian to have the support of Huawei's executive. Yes or no? Yes or no? Please. He can't respond. Is he going to answer? He can't answer. He avoided the question just like Justin Trudeau does. He avoided the question because he can't answer. Huawei executives support his campaign. Let's move to the next subject.
Dernier thème de la
The last subject of the second section, environment and energy exports. Inflation and the war in Ukraine have made Canadians aware of the very important role that our natural resources can play in this country and abroad. We don't yet have the infrastructure needed to export more resources on the East Coast, because Quebec is not in favor of such projects. LNG Quebec is a very good example of this. As Prime Minister, what will you do to develop and export our energy resources while working with the Quebec government
économique,
to
environnementale
highlight and enhance the economic and environmental role that Canadian resources can play? Thank you. That is a crucial and pivotal issue for the country's future, the ability to develop our resources and implement major projects. Only a national government can do that. I am in support of developing the oil, gas, and pipeline sector. I would have an approach that would allow us to develop it while complying with the zero carbon neutral objective in 2025, in 25 years rather. We need to talk about carbon capture, green hydrogen, biogas, small nuclear reactors. What we need is an overall approach that will take us to the results we need to have. Dr. Lewis? I believe that Canada can develop its natural resources while protecting the environment. Our natural gas could be sold to other countries, our liquefied natural gas, and this would help us reduce carbon emissions. Our energy sector is the cleanest in the world. Canada must be able to restore its energy sector. Canadians must be able to go back to work in the energy sector, and we need to improve our revenue from the oil sector and reinvest that revenue in cleaner technology. Mr. Aitchison? Thank you. Canadian energy is the answer to many world problems. It's good for our economy, it's good for the environment, and it is good for the advancement of our foreign policy. Everyone here on the stage is pro-pipeline, but we need a real plan to build more pipelines. We need to establish a framework that makes it possible to build more. We need clear guidelines and a predictable approval process for pipelines and natural resources projects. I believe that Pierre Poilievre would be a good minister of natural resources. Mr. Poilievre. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. That's very kind of you. But yes, we can certainly produce our own energy. There is no way that importing it is helping our environment. We are importing 130,000 barrels a day from abroad, even though we have the third largest reserves in the world here in Canada, and we can produce our resources in the most environmentally friendly way in the world. I would make it possible for pipelines to be built for Newfoundland to produce more oil so that we could replace all the oil that we're importing. What we need to do is ban oil coming from polluting dictators. Canada's energy sector is cleaner than that of other countries. It is important that we build new pipelines. The world needs our energy. For example, as I said, China is using a lot of coal, and with our LNG, we could help China fight climate change. At the same time, Germany is dependent on Russia for its oil. Canada can help Germany with cleaner and greener oil. I'm very proud of our energy sector.
Mr. Baber, thank you very much. I consider Canadian natural resources as a great asset. Canadians can produce energy that's cleaner and safer than the other country. I would develop Canada's potential and make Canada an energy superpower that we should be. Quebec produces electricity. We should make Quebec a hub for electricity in North America. Quebec has a lot of natural gas as well. We have to develop Quebec's energy potential. Thank you. Now we'll open up the debate because of the time we wasted with the applause. We only have 2 minutes if we're to finish on time. Mr.
Le pipeline qui s'est construit au Québec s'est construit quand j'étais au gouvernement. C'est un pipeline qui s'est construit entre Lévis et la rive sud de Montréal. Je veux vous faire remarquer une chose. Pour tous ces grands projets-là.
For all these major projects, there are no major projects that could actually happen in a country without the Prime Minister showing leadership on it. It just can't be done in any other way. And investors won't invest billions of dollars in a project if they don't have any predictability about the project. And that's what the Prime Minister's job is, be it developing minerals, creating an energy corridor. The project, the LNG project in Quebec, was turned down in a very different context. Now we have a war in Ukraine, which has highlighted energy security for our country, including for Quebec. And if we had built a pipeline, we could have been suppliers of gas and oil for Europe instead of funding the Russian war. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth again, Mr. Charest. When you were the Liberal Premier of Quebec, you were against the development of LNG. And if you hadn't banned the production of gas, Quebec would now be exporting gas to Europe to break the dependency on Putin's gas. That was your decision. Now you're trying to gain support in other areas of the country, and to do that you've changed your mind. That's the reality. Jean Charest has changed his mind so many times we don't even know what party he's a member of anymore. I'm in favor of for the production of energy. I will scrap anti-energy bills and legislation like C69 and C48 so that we can produce more LNG here in Canada and so that we can produce more oil here in Canada as well.
On rentre maintenant dans la dernière section de ce débat, mais avant de rentrer...
Last section of the debate, before we get to the closing statements, we'd like to have a better understanding of the leadership style of the candidates. Well, I'll ask them the same question. The order has been determined by a draw, but they haven't yet received the question. They only have 30 seconds to answer the question. This is the question. Each leader in the history of our party had his or her own style. For example, Stephen Harper, even as Prime Minister, would always talk to backbenchers at 24 Sussex to remain in contact with his members. How would you describe your leadership style? Well, it's great to stay in contact with backbench MPs. You have to remain in contact also with ordinary people in Canada. The working class has been completely forgotten over the past 2 years, over the past 7 years, in fact, under this Liberal government. Attacks against their freedoms, attacks against their wages, increases in tax and inflation. I want to remain in touch with the working class. I want to be visible. I want to be available and take part in events with them because these are the people I want to work with. Mr. Aitchison.
Nous devons avoir le courage de
We must have the courage of our convictions, and we must defend our values and our principles as well. People have had enough of the status quo. This is why I want to focus on providing real conservative solutions to make life more affordable and to show Canadian leadership internationally. And sometimes that means taking difficult decisions. Thank you. Mr. Brown. It's important to have a good relationship with Conservative MPs, but it's also important to grow our party in Canadian suburbs. So we need a Conservative Party which is a bigger tent. It's far too small right now. There are some candidates who want to take us left. It's important to bring all Conservatives together under the same tent so that we can fight Justin Trudeau. Thank you, Dr. Lewis. I want to unite the Conservative movement, fiscal Conservatives, traditional Conservatives, and everyone by respecting the opinions of all of us. We must also respect the members of the party. I will respect people who are pro-life and people who are pro-choice as well. The woke culture and cancel culture are hurting our country. Thank you. Mr. Baber. Thank you. We can't defend democracy in Canada without defending democracy within the Conservative Party. I want to unite the party by respecting a diversity of opinion within our party. We must respect the caucus. Members work for their constituents, not for the leader of the party. We must do what needs to be done for the good of Canada. This is what we expect from our party. Mr. Charest, I don't know if people watching us tonight realize, but you've just asked a very, very important question about the future of the party. The ability of the leader to work with the new caucus. I was leader of the Progressive Conservatives federally for several years, and I was leader of the Liberal Party, a coalition, for 15 years. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life. I loved working with those people, and I'll do it with the new caucus as well, because these are exceptional men and women who deserve the respect of the leader. Thank you. Now, closing statements from the candidates. Candidates have carte blanche. Each of them have 2 minutes to talk directly to members and to all Canadians watching us tonight. Mr. Aitchison, you're first. We must attract more people to our party, but we can only do that if we don't have a divisive discourse. We must inspire our team as leader. I would restore unity within the Conservative Party, and I will regain the trust of Canadians so that we can form government again. We are the party of John A. Macdonald and Jean-Étienne Cartier, who founded Canada. They succeeded because of the party, and Canadians were united behind them. With a strong team, a united team, focused on what unites us, we can think about a better future. We wanted to form a government that makes life more affordable. If you want that, join me at scottaitchison.ca. If you want a more inclusive Canada, join me at votescott.ca. If you want a Canada that sees its role restored internationally, join me on votescott.ca. If you want an approach with a responsible environmental approach, join me at votescott.ca. In this period of uncertainty, Canadians are counting on the Conservatives to restore dignity and respect in leaders and the political system. If you want real leadership, join me at votescott.ca. Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Poilievre, 2 minutes. Scott, I think I missed the website address. Could you repeat it for me? Well, look, seriously speaking, people think that they've lost control over their own lives. I meet single mothers who are missing meals so that they can feed their kids. I met a welder in St. John's who can't afford to replace his work boots because he doesn't have enough money to do that. I've met time and time again young people who are living in their parents' basements who can't even dream of starting their own family. People have lost control over their own decisions, their own lives. Vaccine passports, for example, which have taken away people's freedoms and which have taken away the jobs from people who are patriotic and have always done their jobs competently. Mark Twain said, there are two very important days in your life, the day you're born and the day where you see why you were born. The why is the most important question. I'm running for Prime Minister of Canada to give control of, give Canadians back control over their lives. It's for freedom that immigrants come to Canada. It's for freedom that we can believe in a better future. We have to restore the freedom people need to deal with inflation, to buy what they need. We must give back the right to free speech by fighting against Justin Trudeau's censorship. Our country must be free and must be self-sufficient in energy. We must increase production of our own resources here in Canada. We have to scrap red tape. We have to build new homes for young families. I want a Canada which is free, where ordinary Canadians are masters in their own homes and where politicians are servants. Thank you. Dr. Lewis, 2 minutes. Canada is the best country in the world. As leader, I will always fight to protect our sovereignty, to reduce taxes, to balance the budget, and to develop our natural resources, and to protect the environment without the carbon tax. As leader, I will protect our freedoms, our fundamental freedoms. I will defend our democracy. I will protect parental rights. And I will come up with real solutions for reconciliation. Canadians need hope and unity. I will always be the voice to defend your rights. I'm not a career politician. I am a candidate of hope, of unity, and of compassion. I believe in our great country, and I hope that you will believe in it with me. We have to defend the freedom of speech, the freedom of regions, and the freedom of conscience and religion. This is the Canada that I want to build. I hope that you will join me in building that better Canada. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Charest, over to you. Thank you very much. Well, this evening, I'm speaking to a room of members of the Conservative Party of Canada. There are people listening to us across the country tonight as well. And I'd like to draw your attention to one thing which must happen to you very, very often. Members of your family, when they find out you're members of the Conservative Party, they're watching the leadership race and they're interested in the choices that the Conservative Party will make. Out of respect for you, you have to choose the leader before you can think about really forming government. That's out of respect for you. Having said that, however, people are worried. The question they're asking themselves is a very serious question, and it's the following. Will the Conservative Party of Canada really go down the road taken by American parties, a divisive approach, an approach based on slogans where all answers are non-answers, or will we do politics in Canada for Canadians? And that's the choice I'm offering you. I'm not a pseudo-American here. This is not what we want for our country. We want a leader which is able to unite the party, which also has judgment, which isn't beholden to conspiracy theories. Who doesn't speak out against the governor of the Bank of Canada or who advocates for Bitcoin. This isn't what we need for Canada. We need a leader to unite the country, more importantly, to unite the country, because Canadians want a country that works for them, that can develop its economy. And why are we doing that? Because we want to leave a more prosperous country to our kids than the one we inherited. We won the lottery from our parents, and we should be doing the same for our kids. We should be uniting the country, creating a prosperous country, which is really up to our dreams and aspirations for what we want for the next generation. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Babbers. Mr. Babbers, 2 minutes. Please keep your applause for later. Mr. Babbers, 2 minutes. Thank you very much. I came to Canada with my family when I was 15 without any money, but I received a lot of benefits from our country, because what you have to do to succeed in Canada is to work very, very hard and be kind. I worked in private business for 2 years, and I was supported by my community. Last year, I decided to oppose the government because we haven't thought about the impact of lockdown during COVID. I continue to fight for free choice for our democracy. Defending people is something that I have done throughout my career. I'm not an ordinary politician. I don't even like politics, but I love this country, and I love Canadians as well. I don't want to watch on the sidelines. I don't want to see Canadian democracy vanish. I want to stop censorship, segregation as well, and to want to make sure that media is independent and free. I am the only one here to have opposed a lockdown, and I paid a dear price for that. I opposed the vaccine passport, and I tabled legislation against vaccine mandates, because I'll always defend Canadians, even when it's not a popular position. You can expect this from me. I'm not frightened of politics or cancel culture. I'll always say what I believe and do what I believe is right. You'll always know what my position is. I would ask you to support me. It would be a great honor for me to lead our party and our country. Thank you very much. Mr. Brown.
Pendant 2 élections,
for 2 consecutive elections, the Conservatives have won the popular vote, but Justin Trudeau is still Prime Minister. Why? Because Conservatives have forgotten how to win elections. I want to change that. I'm Mayor Patrick Brown, and I'm running for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. I know how to build a big tent party. That's what we need to defeat Justin Trudeau. I've already done this as Mayor of a city in Greater Toronto. I focused on conservative values. I didn't avoid them. I froze taxes. I fought against crime in our community. This is the type of leadership that I'll bring to Ottawa. To win, Conservatives need a fighter, someone who will defend us against attacks from the Liberal media. It's time for the Conservatives to win government. You need a leader that knows how to attract new supporters and new volunteers to our movement. A Conservative Party with a leader that can show millions of Canadians who don't currently vote Conservative that their values are our values. This is the way I won in the region of Greater Toronto. This is the same way we will win in Quebec. and this is the way I will govern Canada as a Conservative Prime Minister. Help me lead our party to a majority government. I'm Mayor Patrick Brown. I'm a fighter. I'm a leader. I'm a winner. I would ask you to support me. Thank you very much. Thank you to candidates this evening for having debated with so much enthusiasm and vigour. I'd like to thank the organising committee as well, the people here tonight, despite the fact that some of you took too many liberties. The last day to buy your membership card is the 3rd of June, and the result of the vote will be known on the 10th of September. To get to know our candidates better, they have all created videos which are posted on the party website. The country is facing several challenges. Each of the candidates this evening has expressed the way they will deal with those issues. If you care about the future of Canada, join the Conservative Party of Canada and vote to make a difference. The Conservative Party is young, it's renewing itself. It's now time to take action to build a movement to replace Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your evening.